Aristotle's answered the question about justice. For Aristotle, justice is a matter of giving people what they deserve, giving people their due. It's a matter of figuring out the proper fit between persons with their virtues and their appropriate social roles. Suppose we're distributing flutes. What is the relevant merit or basis of desert for flutes? Who should get the best ones? What's Aristotle's answer? Important to see. Why should the best flutes go to the best flute players? Aristotle is not a utilitarian. He's not just saying that way there will be better music and everyone will enjoy it, everyone will be better off. His answer is the best flutes should go to the best flute players because that's what flutes are for. So this idea of reasoning from the goal, from the telos, is called teleological reasoning. Now, this may seem, as I said, a strange idea, that we're supposed to reason from the purpose, but it does have a certain intuitive plausibility. Consider the allocation, let's say at Harvard, of the best tennis courts or squash courts. How should they be allocated? Who should have priority in playing on the best courts? Well, you might say those who can best afford them, set up a fee system, charge money for them. Aristotle would say no. You might say, well, Harvard big shots, the most influential people at Harvard, who would they be? The senior faculty should have priority in playing on the best tennis courts. No, Aristotle would reject that. Some scientist may be a greater scientist than some varsity tennis player is a tennis player, but still the tennis player is the one who should have priority for the best, playing on the best tennis court. There is a certain intuitive plausibility to this idea, but there is a certain naturalness to thinking about even the natural world as teleologically ordered, as a purposive whole. In fact, children have to be educated out of this way of looking at the world. I realized this when my kids were very young and I was reading them a book, Winnie the Pooh. And Winnie the Pooh gives you a great idea of how there is a certain natural, childlike way of looking at the world in a teleological way. You may remember a story of Winnie the Pooh walking in the forest one day. He came to a place in the forest, and from the top of a tree there came a loud buzzing noise. Winnie the Pooh sat at the foot of the tree, put his head between his paws, and began to think. Here's what he said to himself. That buzzing noise means something. You don't get a buzzing noise like that just buzzing and buzzing without its meaning something. If there's a buzzing noise, somebody's making a buzzing noise. And the only reason for making a buzzing noise that I know of is because you're a bee. Then he thought for another long time and said, and the only reason for being a bee that I know of is making honey. And then he got up and he said, and the only reason for making honey is so I can eat it. So he began to climb the tree. This is an example of teleological reasoning. It isn't so implausible after all. Now, we grow up and we're talked out of this way of thinking about the world. But here's the question. Even if teleological explanations don't fit with modern science, even if we've outgrown them in understanding nature, isn't there something still intuitively and morally plausible, even powerful, about Aristotle's idea that the only way to think about justice is to reason from the purpose, the goal, the telos of the social practice. And isn't that precisely what we were doing when we were disagreeing about affirmative action? You could almost recast that disagreement as one about what the proper, appropriate purpose or end of a university education consists in. Reasoning from the purpose or from the telos or from the end, Aristotle says that's indispensable to thinking about justice. Is he right?
Up, down to my appetite's delight. While I up, down, touch the ground, I think of things to chew, like honey and milk and chocolate. With a hefty, happy appetite, I'm a hefty, happy poo.
With a hefty, happy appetite, he's a hefty, happy poo.
Oh, bother. Empty again. Only the sticky parts left. That buzzing noise means something. And the only reason for making a buzzing noise that I know of is because you're a bee. And the only reason for being a bee is to make honey. And the only reason for making honey is so I can eat it.
And so Winnie the Pooh climbed the honey tree. He climbed and he climbed and he climbed.
All right, let's start up in the balcony, if that's all right. Go ahead.
Okay, your argument depends upon us believing that we would argue and set policy or justice from a bottom, that's for the disadvantaged. And I just don't see from a proof standpoint where we've proven that. Why not the top?
Right. And what's your name?
Mike.
Mike, all right, good question. Put yourself behind the veil of ignorance. Enter into the thought experiment. What principles would you choose? How would you think it through?
Well, I would say things like even Harvard's existence is an example of preaching toward the top, because Harvard takes the top academics, and I didn't know when I was born how smart I would be, but I worked my life to get to a place of this caliber. Now, if you'd said Harvard's going to randomly take 1,600 people of absolutely no qualification, we'd all be saying, well, there's not much to work for.
And so what principle would you choose?
In that situation, I would say a merit-based one, where I don't necessarily know what I have, but I'd rather have a system that rewards me based on my efforts.
So you, Mike, behind the veil of ignorance, would choose a merit-based system where people are rewarded according to their efforts.
I think what the question you're asking is saying, you know, if we want to look at whatever utilitarianism, policy, or it is, do we want to maximize world wealth? And I think a system that rewards merit is the one that we've pretty much all established is what is best for all of us. Despite the fact that some of us may be in the 2nd percentile and some may be in the 98th percentile, and at the end of the day it lifts that lowest base level, a community that rewards effort as opposed to innate differences.
Mike, what do you say?
We're all sitting in this room and we have undeserved glory of some sort, that you should not be satisfied with the process of your life because you have not created any of this. And I think from a standpoint of not just this room, us being upset, but from a societal standpoint, we should have some kind of a gut reaction to that feeling that, you know, the guy who runs the race, he actually harms us as opposed to maybe makes me run that last 10 yards faster, and that makes the guy behind me run 10 yards faster, and the guy behind him 10 yards faster.
All right, so Mike, let me ask you, you talked about effort before. Effort. Do you think when people work hard to get ahead and succeed, that they deserve the rewards that go with effort? Isn't that the idea behind your defense of?
I mean, of course, bring Michael Jordan here, I'm sure you can get him, and have him come and defend himself about why he makes $31 million. And I think what you're going to realize is his life was a very, very tough one to get to the top, and that we are basically being the majority oppressing the minority in a different light. It's very easy to pick on him. Very easy.
Effort. You know what? You've persuaded
a few, but that's about it.
a lot of people.
Recognize anyone else?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, anybody else? Unpaid parking tickets?
What if that's important?
Huh?
Like, maybe we're supposed to figure out who's good and who's bad.
World doesn't work that way, sweetheart.
Kind of not stopping this whole thing at all?
We don't know that. It might. There has to be a reason behind all of this, right?
God, sweetheart. Not every shitty thing that happens in this world has to have a reason behind it. Maybe they just want to fucking watch us kill each other.
Well, we should at least consider it.
Moral justifications for what they did. Yes.
All right, thank you. I just feel like in a situation that desperate, you have to do what you have to do to survive.
You have to do what you have to do.
You got to do what you got to do, pretty much. If you've been going 19 days without any food, you know, someone just has to take the sacrifice. Someone has to make the sacrifice, and people can survive.
How about we kill all the black people next, yeah?
What are you talking about?
Don't play the race card, man. This is all just fucking chance.
Yeah? Right. That's why most of us are dead, right?
It's every man for himself in here.